Hi there, everyone. If it's 11 a.m. Eastern time, and I hope everybody set their clocks where they need to be, because I know me and Sarah were really focused on getting our clocks together since Sarah's out in Spain and they don't change their time like we do. So I hope everybody coordinated it. And we're really looking forward to a great show today. The word of the day is healing. This is the hour of empower. And I'm so blessed and honored to have Sarah Dawkins with us again. I want everybody to appreciate that chat is wide open. We depend on your comments to really direct our thoughts and how better ways we can serve you and give you some really valuable takeaways that you can actually use and get value for your time, thought, and effort today. So with that, let me turn it over to Sarah, and Sarah can bring you up to date, and also how healing, what it means to her. And also, as you can see, her book is Heal Yourself. So it's a great tie-in. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Don. It's great to be back again. 2 weeks again. I mean, where has time gone? And this year's nearly gone already.
Yeah.
Time's just flying. So in the last 2 weeks, I've actually been writing an ebook because as part of healing, forgiveness plays a huge part in that. So I'm midway writing this ebook to help people to understand the emotional side of healing. When we talk about healing, our first thoughts are often about healing ourselves, as in healing a disease, healing a broken bone, healing a symptom, things like that. But if we look at what healing actually encompasses, it's about, I think there's 4 R's. There's repair, replace, regeneration, and recovery. And all of that is encompassed in healing. And healing, as I say, we tend to think about our bodies, but we can heal whilst we're in the grieving process, and we can heal relationships. So healing is quite a broad spectrum term that we tend to narrow it down and think primarily of healing our body. So it's a massive subject, and within healing comes, for me, the 4 pillars of physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. And when we think about healing our body and healing our symptoms, again, we primarily think about the physical side of healing. I need to eat better, I need to hydrate, I need to sleep, I need to maybe go for a walk or do some exercise. Those are the first things that come to mind. And they're all located within the physical pillar that we do for our physical body. But then we need to look at our mental health, and healing our mind encompasses things like being mindful, meditation, but also about being creative as well, using our mind to create with. And then we've got the emotional side of things, and that's about the company we keep, the relationships that we build, because that has emotional ties, but also healing our past, any emotional traumas, and that is quite pivotal in the healing our body. We can't heal our body until we've healed our past. And then there's a spiritual aspect, and that is encompassing the small voice that's inside of us, whatever name people give to that small voice. It's about reconnecting to that small voice and listening to it and trusting it, but also that connection to that small voice is important as well. So a lot of us have forgotten or have disconnected from that small voice inside us. It's about reconnecting and rekindling that. So it's a massive subject, is healing. And that's my take on it.
I think it's a beautiful take, and it's a great way to, start the thought process for everybody on what they believe and define as healing for them. Always happy to hear what your healing thoughts are in the audience. And what comes to mind after hearing you so eloquently, articulate, the elements of healing, it really is a from to a to, right? Because I had a surgery, so from there I need to mend, right? You know, I had a broken relationship. From there, I had to get healthy again or start a new relationship or whatever the next comfortable thing for me to do, because it's kind of after the fact, right? Now it's towards the future. So if you fell down, you're not going to change that event. How you get up and then where you go from there is important. So everything is directional,
It is.
right? And if you have purpose and direction, then all you have to do is fill in the time and the activity to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with reflection. And I think part of healing is self healing, you know, is giving yourself more than just bed rest or nutrition, but healthy thoughts,
Yeah, very much so.
right? I mean, if you're healing, wouldn't it be great to be watching happy things, funny things, reading interesting, adventurous things, than getting caught up in, you know, that stuff that you tend to take for granted when you're healthier, right? When you're healthier, you take on more responsibility, you take on more stress, and maybe you handle it well. But when you have to heal, you have to give everything up but yourself, right? And then once you get right, then you could start going back. Or maybe after you get right, you said, you know, there's a thought that what will heal you can prevent you from getting what you're healing from, right? So if you take the cure as the prevention, if you start acting more towards yourself, self reflection before you have to, get into a good nutritional or exercise habit as if you needed to, but maybe by doing it, you won't need to, right? Why not get it early? And if it'll heal, it'll probably prevent. So, you know, there's timing involved, there's positioning involved, but I think the best thing one can do is be your own best friend during those times. The things you used to argue with yourself about or not measure up to yourself need to take a walk while you get healthier. And then, you know what? Once you break a habit that doesn't serve you, you may not want to go back to it. Right. And I think that's where healing really happens, when you reinvent yourself. But let me go to the audience. We've got Tanya here, who's from South Africa and is working on sales funnels. So good to see you, Tanya. Tanya was on the show. Hope to have her back. We've got Omar here, who's in charge of Zoom Party, which is a takeoff on Jeopardy. And he really helps a lot of kids and has a kids show. I was actually on the show, and I found out yesterday from Omar I'm in the finals for this year. So great to be participating. Welcome, Omar. We've got Christopher here. Haven't seen Christopher in a while. Always good to see you. I'm joining from Philadelphia, dropping in saying hi again. And you probably were one of the few who set your clocks back the right way. So thank you, Christopher, for coming today. So Sarah, like you say, healing is so expansive and affects so much. And sometimes you can heal something that isn't wrong, right? It just needs attention, right? There is no right or wrong to an injury. There is no, the last thing you want to do is, well, I should have left 5 minutes later. I wouldn't have got into that accident. Or, if I wouldn't have done this, this wouldn't have happened. But, you're moving into the past that can't be rehabilitated as opposed to the future. So what's your new thoughts, Sarah?
Yeah, I think following on from that, Don, it's about being proactive. Because quite often we are reactive. We don't tend to look after ourselves potentially as well as we could until we get sick or until we have an accident. So if we look at health and be proactive towards our health to ensure that we give ourselves the best, and engage in self-care. And self-care is about putting ourselves first. And quite often we can feel uncomfortable in doing that because we feel the need to give to others. Not everybody. Some people are more adept at looking after themselves than other people, and it's a lesson in itself, is to actually say, no, I am important and I need to look after myself. So it's about undertaking that self-care and looking after ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that to try and prevent us from getting sick, or to try and prevent us from having those accidents. The more that we can look after ourselves, the less sick we will be. Or if we do get sick, chances are it will last for a lot less, because we're already starting from a good position, as opposed to we get sick and then we think, oh, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to do? Do I need a pill? Do I need a drink? Do I need a herb or a root? And start thinking about that. Whereas if we start looking after ourselves and eat well and look after all parts of us, we certainly put ourselves in a better position to keep and maintain our health, rather than waiting until we get sick, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And, I think self-healing goes with self-sufficiency and self-dependency, because if you can heal yourself, you don't need someone else to help you as much, and you become less of a responsibility or burden for someone who will help you, but it's an inconvenience, or it's a distraction at best. And, the better you take care of yourself, the less people have to worry about you, right? Isn't it great when someone actually does reinvent themselves? They say, I stopped drinking, I lost 30 pounds, I go to the gym. All of a sudden, it's like, well, this person's on their way. I don't have to worry like I used to, so there's collateral benefit that your self-healing does, because now it gives more people more time to themselves if they're not having to deal with you and your situation. And then you feel better because you don't want to make people feel bad, right? So if now this person can go to their card game or their event versus they had to stay with me all the time.
Yeah.
And, one thing I will say, because I was fortunate with my wife, to take care of my mother in her last couple of years at our house, is it's a thankless, challenging situation being a constant caregiver. It's one thing to have someone living with you, that's a little bit of an inconvenience, but if they're self-sufficient, they get around, hey, it depends on who they are. Some people would be the best company you'd ever have. So when you care for someone, you can appreciate what it is and how much people do sacrifice that you're not aware of, who have individuals at home that need special attention. And it makes you more grateful for things that people take for granted, because people should be happy for what they don't have, not just for what they can't get. When you want to feel sorry for yourself, go to a hospital one day and walk through the halls there and see what everybody's dealing with. And maybe not winning a card game or not winning a ball game doesn't seem so important. So I think it's all perspective, context, and balance. And I think that's what good health is balance. If you're great at exercising, but you're awful at what you eat, it's going to just counteract each other. So, Sarah, this is so important, because today so many people are going through so much so fast with little reserve or resources, that they're just getting marginalized or minimized or putting off in a corner somewhere. And I think the benefit we can all bring is communication, because everybody can do that. Everybody can benefit from it. And you're always better off with people who are dealing or understanding your situation right from the get-go, as opposed to squeezing in or qualifying or being chosen. And I think peer-to-peer is the answer. And with forums like this, it's all your question. Your question can get you an answer because there's people ready, willing, and able to support it. So what do you think to those new words?
Yeah, I love it. And the other thing about support, Don, is it's great to have that support, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from your nearest and dearest or people in your street or your town or your village. I've got an awful lot of support online with people who really align with my values and morals and beliefs. And that has been so helpful for me because we're all on a healing journey. We've all got things coming up and mulling over. So to have that support is really beneficial to the healing process. But when we talk about healing, I also want to just clarify that it doesn't always mean curing. So you could have somebody in very bad health, and for them, healing could be coming to terms with the fact that they're in their final stages of life. You know, they understand that their bodies or their minds are not going to physically heal the processes that are going on, but they've come to peace, they've come to terms with whatever's going to happen to them. And that peace, they've healed all their angst about dying and come to peace and come to terms with that fact, knowing that they can't or are not going to heal their physical body. And that just finding that peace, coming to terms with whatever's going on in their life. And it doesn't have to be end of life. That could be for anything. You know, if we look at, well, I can't control these aspects of my life. So if I can come to terms with that and stop trying to control something that I can't control, that then will bring me peace in my own life. Because we all too often we try and control things that we don't have any control over. And for some of us, it causes angst because we're still trying to control those things. So if we can let go of that need to control and come to terms with that, we heal our own inner self because we're stopping trying to control it. And we've come to terms with the fact we can't. And in doing so, that gives us inner peace. So it doesn't even have to be an illness. It could be, you know, things that are going on in our lives.
Well, absolutely. And I think the one thing everybody can be confident about is the moment you're in is the moment you have some control over, right?
Yes.
So, you know, if you can do whatever you need or want to do in the moment, you're healed in the moment. Now, you're right. If someone says in 4 weeks this will happen or 8 weeks this will happen, but you know, there's been so many studies of people that needed to live longer and they found a way.
Yes.
You know, if someone's daughter's getting married, if there's a baby on the way, and someone says they only gave me 90 days to live and they live 9 more months, right? Because they have something that needs them, that draws them, that keeps them where they are. And the other aspect, and that's really the placebo effect, and that continues to grow every year for some reason, is once someone tells you you have something, you start acting as if you have that something.
Yeah.
Right? And by acting as having something, you manifest that something if you believe in it, you know, and if you believe in a healing path or a path that you trust to unfold the way it should or needs to, and this focus on the moment, you know, there's a quantity of life, there's a quality of life. Fearing something that's inevitable is unnecessary fear because you can't change the inevitable. but you can change the inevitable. And that's, I think, part of the healing is where do you place your bets? Where do you think this would help me the most? Is, I need to pump up exercise or the nutrition or whatever. But the other thing is having a plan and being in control of it, right? Nobody likes to put their fate out to the wind, and or a stranger, or especially a medical professional, when you could work peer to peer on different levels. People look at doctors' offices and hospitals as the ultimate healing. It's just a very small part, really. You can go to churches and find a lot of peace, a lot of community. You can go to organizations, you can create groups, and even on LinkedIn, there's so many people and so many subjects. Define a peer group that's into whatever you're into. You find company out of not being lonely, right? If you're by yourself and you got a loop, and that's the worst thing most times when you're sick or feeling down, it's the last time to be by yourself, especially if it's a relationship issue, right? Where now you're missing that person for whatever reason. And you can get lost in a bigger group, new people, and there's another day, because here's the challenge with being down and losing or failing or whatever you want to call it for the moment, is you just left everything that you're used to and have yet to approach everything you're going to get into. So you're at the worst point, right? You're at zero if you're lucky. But how fast do you want to get out of zero? How fast do you want to start meeting people? And not for what you had, but for what's out there, and figure out what that could be. Because too many people, they want to replace something like it's a carburetor or a set of brakes, instead of saying, hey, I needed time to myself. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I have it now because this person left or passed away. And, slowing things down in some ways is so important, and speeding things up in other ways is so important. So slowing down the self ridicule or punishment that you provide, especially if you might have been responsible for that person's situation, and then you got guilt and shame and all that other stuff. So I think sometimes, you're better off with a clean sweep. Just lock the door to the past for a while and don't open it, and open the door to the future and build one. Some people have never had a chance to create their own future, let alone live it. And so there's a lot to it. So what's your thoughts, Sarah? Looks like we got
Yeah. Can I just come back to, because I've noticed quite a few messages come in.
Okay, for sure. Let's get to Tanya. Going through grief affects the mind, the body, and the heart. We underestimate the time it takes to recover. So true. Healing and coming to peace, and that's exactly what Sarah had mentioned. And that's a joyful thing. Can you imagine saying to yourself, I'm going to heal and come to peace? Especially if maybe you haven't had much of either one lately. And, just showing that you're comfortable and capable helps other people around you, because they take their clues, right? If you're with someone who's really negative and angry and yelling and everything else because of their situation, you feel more sympathetic, but you don't feel more connected. It's not something you say, I just love coming here every day. And, there's so many people I've met and known, even in their passing, we're so graceful. We're so generous for the people around. They never wanted to go put on like, oh, I'm hurting. It's like, they're hurting, but they won't say it because they're thinking of you instead of themselves some ways. But, there was a story, an ancient story, and it was about a culture that when an elderly person was about to pass, the oldest child would carry that person up the mountain and set him in a cave and bring food and water and say goodbye. So a mother was about to go, and the oldest son was carrying her up the mountain, and he put her on on his shoulder, and he kept hearing twigs breaking. And he looked around and he saw his mother breaking the twigs. And he said, "Mother, what are you doing that for? You know where we're going, and you're not going to come back." And she says, "Yeah, I know that, but I want to make sure you find your way home." Right?
Oh,
So that kind of shows you the everlasting love that one has, that's so important. So let's move to Dennis. Dennis is our rhymer. Agree, let's go and let go of control, but stay in the moment and live longer, not wronger. And I think everything's right if it feels right and it does right by you. Don't let other people's definition of what's good or healthy for you change what you know. Agree, live on a path and not on the past, for sure. Maria's here. Great to see you, Maria. We move from topic to topic. Is this topic getting depressing? Not really. I think that it's, again, it's whatever it means to you, whatever you feel from it. But I think the whole goal to healing is getting better, being better, doing better. And that could be at your work. You could heal a workplace situation. You could heal a personal or professional situation. Dr. Joanne's here. Always great to see Dr. Joanne. Healing may be a process, yet don't give up. Healing is soothing and accesses our gratitude. And Dr. Joanne knows quite a bit about that from personal experience and is such an inspiration for so many people. So thank you, Dr. Joanne. Beverly's here. Great to see you, Beverly. Hello, everyone. Beverly is here every Tuesday and has been doing it for about 6 months. Plus, Beverly has her own podcast. She's doing a lot of stuff for a lot of people. So she really is part of the healing journey for a lot of people. Dr. Joanne White says healing is a process and don't give up. If it takes time, healing can access our gratitude. Never lose hope. And I think hope is really the foundation to healing, is the belief it will be a better day. I will be a better person. I can get by this. Because you know what? There's always exceptions. When people even say there's an 80% chance of something, well, there's a 20% chance of something too, right? Do you have to be in the majority? Are you in the majority of most everything you do? Probably not. If you're an explorer, if you're a pioneer, if you're a risk taker, you want to be on the edge. You want to see further down the road if you can. So yeah, and that's the key. If you talk to oncologists, they say the primary difference between people who survive and people who don't is their mindset.
yeah.
So, if it's, that's where the placebo effect comes into play, is because if you believe it, what it says is your mind has a lot of control over healing. And it could be subconscious, it could be something else that you can't really put the two together. But, they say faith is the belief in the invisible.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can believe in things you can't see yet or feel, it's no different than the checks in the mail. Right? The check isn't in your hands yet, but if you know it's in the mail and it's a real check and it's coming, you feel as if it is in the bank already. And I think that's where one can adjust. Dennis, our last one for now. The joyful journey is a great hot springs in sunny Colorado, also where smart Don Cohen is, and so is Dennis being in Colorado. And that's the other thing before I turn it over to Sarah. It's levity, it's comedy, it's that's what makes people heal. There was a experience of a guy that was given a terminal outcome to his illness, and nothing they could do, they said. And he took a TV up to a cabin, and for 3 days just watched I Love Lucy for every hour, right? And he laughed, and he couldn't get enough of that stuff, and he healed, right? because I always believe if something could start something, something could stop that something, right? And maybe it was just, how many test results are different, false negatives, positive, whatever it is. So Sarah, so much to cover.
Yeah, and I think that I want to start with the doctors. Actually, they've got so much power. Like you say, they'll say, you've got this disease or this health problem or that, and you can expect these symptoms, or you can expect to live this long, or you can expect. And I don't think they realize how powerful they are, because they're in that position of authority. People take on board what the doctors say as gospel. But who made that doctor the authority on your body? And it comes back to that little voice that I said, really connect with that inner voice and ask your body what it needs. Ask yourself what you can do to help yourself. Because we can get stuck in a rut, in a diagnosis. And I have a few people follow me on Instagram, and they are whatever warriors or whatever disease is their profile name, and they're documenting their journey. But it's not a journey to wellness, it's just a journey of how they're living their lives. And I've put a couple of comments on some, but it's about, like you've just said, it's about mindset, Don. If we are open-minded and we can take on board new information, like, the doctor's not the authority on you, you're the authority on you. That's a massive big step for some people. But then if we can look at other people and say, well, yes, you've been diagnosed with this disease, but the doctor says you can't heal it and need medicine all your life. But again, who's the authority on your body? You are. So tap into your body wisdom, because, like, in my book, Heal Yourself, so many people have healed diseases doctors said they couldn't heal. So if myself and all these other people have healed from things doctors said we can't heal, then why can other people not heal from the same diseases or different diseases? Because our body really is a machine. And, think of it like a car. If you look after your car and put oil and water in and treat it well, your car will run and run and run. And our bodies are the same. If we treat our body and give it what it needs with the nourishment and some mindfulness, a bit of meditation, and listening to that inner voice, we can really nourish our body. And it comes back to being proactive rather than wait for that disease to occur. What can we do now? But that said, if we've been diagnosed with something, why do we need to think, well, that's it, that's my life, I'm now affiliated with this, whatever, depression or multiple sclerosis or asthma, and that's my whole life? We don't have to. If we can open our minds and think, well, my body's created this, what is the message behind it? Because there's always a message. If we look at metaphysics, the body creates, well, the subconscious mind starts and the body creates what's in the subconscious mind. So what do we need to look at in our body, in our symptoms, to understand what the message is? And I'm not a lover of labeling a disease as a disease. I'm like, let's look at what symptoms are being seen rather than naming the disease. Because when we label that disease, we then take that on board as ours, and there's a whole set of programs. Well, I need to expect this, and I can't eat that, or I've got to stop doing that, or in however long I'm going to be, crippled or have an operation. And so if we can step outside of that disease diagnosis and look at what symptoms have I got, and then step into that, what is the message behind the symptoms, we can start unraveling what the symptoms mean and start looking after our body, our mind and our soul, and look at healing whatever's behind the symptom expression. As you say, we manifest whatever's in our body, has started in our mind first. So if we can unravel that and find the answers to why we've got these symptoms, we can then start look at healing. And as I said before, healing, it's not just a physical thing. We do need to take on board the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. It's a holistic thing, because our body is made up of a huge amount of different systems that doctors have separated out. And you've got an endocrinologist, and you've got a pulmonologist, and you've got a cardiologist. But all of our body systems are all together in our body. They're not separate from each other. So we need to look at our body as a whole and treat it as a whole, not just, oh, well, I've got lung problems, so I'll go to a pulmonologist and we'll only look at the lungs. Well, know what else is going on in our body, because grief, as was mentioned earlier, grief resides in the lungs. So lung problems could be something to do with the air, but it could also be aligned with grief. What are we grieving in our lives? Is it an old version of ourselves? Is it the loss of a loved one? Whereas, what is the underpinning grief that is now taking up residence in the lungs? So it's a different way to look at things, is metaphysics, and it's definitely outside of the medical model, because the doctors are only trained by the pharmacy-sponsored medic training. So when we are looking at health and wellness, we need to step out of just medicine and look at our environment and the way we live our lives, and the thought processes going on, and what's happened in our past, and have we healed that. So it's a holistic healing. You can't just you can just take a pill, but it doesn't heal, it just stops the symptoms. Whereas, so if you look at the whole everything together and treat it as a whole, you can heal. But taking a pill will only take away a symptom. It's not a healing modality.
Well, I think that's so well said and so valuable. And what I believe is a super tool that everyone has is access to information that was never available before, right? Would you take a poll of 1 to any question? Would you ask one person and they say yes or no, and that's got to be what everybody else thinks? And, every time now, whether it's even a LinkedIn issue or even if it relates to a healing issue, I'll go to YouTube. In 40 minutes, I'll see 7 5-minute videos of 7 different people who are addressing it. And pretty soon you'll find, well, hey, this is something new and exciting that even doctors haven't learned yet. And, people sell what they have, right? You go into a store, they're going to sell you what's in stock. If you go to a doctor's office, they're going to sell you what they do, because they think everybody needs what they do, even if they can wait, even if there's a new therapy that they don't do, but they know is starting to be recognized. And also, who are you doing it with? Some doctors elicit great empathy and support, and you feel better. The doctors who actually sit down and talk to you as an individual, not as a patient. I've had doctors, I was in the middle of saying something, they just got up and start walking out. And I would say, is this over? And they say, yeah. And I said, okay, I guess that's how it works around here. I was even talking to a doctor, and because of pressure, because of insurance plans and everything else, they're limited to 20 minutes and that's it. Right? And if by the time you get to know someone, just get comfortable in talking, 10 minutes have been gone. Right? Instead of saying, well, I've been taking up bowling and I'm doing this, and people get a little context, they're like, hey, let's get right to it. Here it is. Here's what you do. And I'm the expert and you don't know anything. So you're lucky to have me, is usually what it is. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're not dealing with the person here. You know, you're not respecting them as an individual. You know, I mean, there used to be doctors that did house calls, right? They come to your house with a black bag. And there were doctors who would go out into the rural country and trade for chickens and eggs their services. You know, so what's changed is access and affordability. And that's why if you can look at things that, you know, teach yourself context. Nothing's as bad as ignorance when something bad is presented to you, right? If someone says you have this and they say, I have no idea what that is, but it sounds scary and I knew somebody with it and this is what happened. So you start drawing comparisons with your past instead of, hey, what organizations are involved in this situation? You know, what information can I get? Because the smarter I get, the more when I do deal with a doctor, I can share things that my questions are about my new discoveries. And do they know that? And I was at a doctor a few years ago, and I'd ask a question, and she would just go and Google it. And then I'm saying I could have done this in my own computer, right? I can Google all day. Why do I need you? And then there's always that here's the recommended therapy. And, you know, I once asked a doctor, so, you know, just tell me how this thing works. You give somebody this medicine and what happens? And he said, listen, I'll tell you, this usually only works for 25% of the people, but we don't know which 25%, right? And he retired soon after, so I guess he was in the honest stage or the honorable stage. And because I would always say, well, you know, it was kind of interesting. I don't want to get too much into medical stuff, but a lot of times they rush into having MRIs or scans and all this radiation and stuff. And I remember asking a question. I said, doesn't this kind of create the problem you're trying to solve? Right? And he laughed and he says, yeah, to a point, you're right. So here's the thing. Nobody knows for sure. And I agree 100% with what Sarah says. You know your body better than anybody else does. And, you know, there was a book and it was a guy, I read it really early on in my life, and it was called The Iatrogenic Disease. And that was all based on diseases that came from medicine. So bad medication, over medication, unnecessary surgery, picking up an infection. And I mean, they said 80% of diseases have something to do with medicine, you know, and they can heal certain things, right? So you can get this and then they fix this, but they still created that before they fixed it again. And I would say, you know, what I share with my doctors, I've been very, very fortunate to be very, very healthy, is I'll always use you as a backstop, but never a front door, right? So I'm going to do everything I can not to be here, but know if I have to be here, then I knew why I had to be here and I did what I could. So let me just cover a lot of these wonderful people. Mindset is key, dear Don. If one way doesn't work, there can be another way to find the answer to your challenge. And, you know, you got to live the life you want, you know, and I've seen so many people give up so many joys in their life. Well, I'm not supposed to have ice cream. Well, you can have a taste. I mean, hopefully you're not that bad off that a spoon of something you've eaten gallons of in your life is going to do you in. Work, that's important. Yes, so true. We are authorities of ourselves. I agree, Sarah. I've had to seek out alternative ways to heal my injuries. You got to be your advocate, and it never hurts to have a second advocate, because there's so many things that people get rushed into, and they don't know what they're doing, and a sense of urgency, and I got to do it, and they really didn't have to. Exactly, Don. No matter how much pain you go through, there's something to be learned, and you can grow from that. Gretchen Skelka is a prime example, and Gretchen's here with me every Monday. or every other Monday. She was here every Monday for about 10 months, and just an unbelievable, wonderful lady who brings so much to so many. Her episode will be released this week. What a positive perspective on pain, healing, and personal growth. And, to that, Beverly, there, Gretchen's been on Beverly's show. Beverly is, and everybody gets to heal themselves by sharing what their journey is with other people, because it's always more fun when you're with someone else. I remember when my mother was in hospice, and what the saddest thing was is, I was there 3 times a day. I'd go there every day, before work, after work, and then after dinner. And my wife would be there, my daughter. So we made sure there was always family. The saddest thing, no one had visitors. They would bring a dog in every couple nights, and the dog would be company for people. And it really made a difference. But it was so sad to see, and what I learned is it's so as valuable to help someone out of this world as it is to bring somebody into this world, and I never would want, and I told my kids, you see how I'm taking care of my mother? That's how you're going to take care of me and your mother, right? We're setting the example for you, and it is the example. Okay, so, and here we have Bernard. Nice to have you. I haven't seen you, but welcome. Maria, I guess, must know Bernard. So thank you for coming. And, I think that's the other part of what we can do here and other shows like it, is the ripple effect. If you learn one little thing and shared it with your network, I mean, why have a network when most people feel, if I can't think of something to post, I'm not posting? Right? When there's so many people, you just read their post and it inspired you, why not just call that your post and share it? Right? Because I'm out there looking at things, and what's good for me might be good for you. And at least I was thinking of you, versus when I feel I'm creative or have something valuable. And it's the sharing, which is the caring. And there's so many people that they even call it spontaneous healing. They can't even explain it. Right? Somebody had this, no way it's ever, and all of a sudden they take an x-ray and it's gone. And they can't explain it, but it happens quite a bit. And it's usually someone that they felt strong enough, thought enough. And the people say, I'm not going to let this get me down. Whatever it is, I'll accept living with it, but I'm still going to keep living. Then already, giving up. And that's the end. Once you give up, once you give in, you've just accepted.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, you should, take that opportunity to be a little wilder, because you don't worry what people think about those little superficial things you're used to. Sometimes if I can just walk from here to there, I'd be the happiest person in the world. If I can just do this. And I know we've been spending so much time on medicine and healing, but it goes for relationships, it goes for finances. I mean, how many people, and that's the worst thing, is when you're into stuff, that's because, when you lose it, you haven't lost anything, because you've already had it, right? If you ate an expensive meal last week and you paid for it, it's over. People buy a dress and they wear it 30 times and they're still keeping it for the next time. How many times do you have to get value out of a thing? And when me and Ann minimized and got down to basics, it was an easier life to follow.
Yeah.
Right? Because it didn't involve much, and everything you put back together are your priorities, are your primary foods that you like, or places that you like, or things that you can do. And now, if money's not as much an issue, you don't have to sell yourself for the things. You don't have to trade your time just for money without knowing who I'm going to spend time with. Am I going to be better for it? Are they going to help me heal? Because one other challenge, and I know Sarah's, been in medicine before helping people, is they can draw all your energy out of you. Right? You can be with somebody, and by the time you're done, you're drained.
Yeah.
And you just made $300 or $600. Your body knows that. Your body knows what you're putting it through when it's happening. And sometimes even when I think of eating, well, it's going to taste so good for like the difference between my mouth and my throat, and after that I won't even know what I ate. But now I got to put everything into motion again. It's like, hey, down there, here's a steak coming at you, when they were ready to take a rest. And if you look at yourself as more than one, I was just laughing the other day I was just walking with Ann, and I just said to my feet, "Thank you so much, feet, for keeping me going like this." And she laughed, and because it just came to mind that that's a part that has to hold you up, has to deal with everything, and you never hear it complain usually. So there's so much to be thankful for. And one more thing is it's easier to accept something that isn't as pleasant when you put in context to everything it is. Like Sarah says, body parts are separate but combined. So if everything but one part is working great, wouldn't the one part be one of 50 instead of one and one, and everything else just takes for granted? It's like, well, hey, I'm great with these things. My taste is good. My this is good. So it really, hey, something just got out of line. We got to move it back in and make it part of us again and tighten things. That's what happens when things get loose. Or in a lot of cases, you can point to it. I've been drinking too much for too long, and now it caught up to me. Right. So it's like no surprise, but now that I'm dealing with it, I'll deal with it. Let's go back. Yeah, I think we covered it. Bernard had that, and it's so much opportunity, Sarah, for people to have is to really look at when you're healthy, how do I get healthier instead of wait till I get sick and then I'll fix it. How do you look at that, Sarah?
I want to go back to what you just said about thanking your feet, because funnily enough, this morning, because it's evening here in Spain now, this morning I wrote a meditation for my class that I'm taking tomorrow. And in that meditation, I've gone through to take people through to express gratitude for all of their parts of their body, for their feet, for carrying the weight, for their legs, for keeping them moving forwards, for their skin to protect them, protect their organs on the inside, but protect their bodies as well from the elements on the outside. Because we often just take for granted that our body, when we're healthy, that our body just works, and we don't often give it a second thought. So if we can express gratitude like you just did, it really is the little things, Don, isn't it, that we can express gratitude. Yeah, we can, and a new car's always nice, and a bigger TV and a better phone, but at the end of the day, that's just stuff. But our feet, our legs, our body, it carries us through life. And so if we can express gratitude for all working together and functioning, and do what we can to keep it functioning, it's those little tiny things really that really do matter. And what else was I going to say? That health doesn't have to be totally healthy. We could have an ailment or something and be okay with that and accepting of whatever that is. But it's that lack of suffering. When we look at what's health and wellness, if we're not suffering, that's bringing us down every day, we can express gratitude for that as well. Because, like you say, take a walk through the hospitals. There's people there that really are suffering, one way or another. So, what is going on in our body? What is it expressing? And just express gratitude for your ability to be able to do things, and make some choices. Because there's some people, there must be quite a lot, but not many that I know, that turn to addictions to alleviate their own suffering, in that they're numbing their pain or they're numbing their feelings. And on the outside, they might look like perfectly normal functioning people, but on the inside, they're using the addictions to numb whatever it is that they don't want to feel, because they haven't got that strength and that courage to deal with it. And that's where support is so helpful for these people, to know that they're not alone, because there's a lot of people out there going through all sorts of things that they don't ever talk about. So you wouldn't know unless you really got to know somebody and understand them. So we can support people, and we don't have to, like you did with your mum, and take her in and give her the full care. We can support people just by being kind. You know, there's a whole range of different support levels. And if we can just be kind and be a shoulder for somebody, just being able to offload and talk about how they're feeling is a huge part of the healing process. Just to be able to talk to somebody who's not going to try and fix them, but they can just offload some of the burden that they're carrying. And that in itself is healing. As I say, they don't need anything back in return. They just need somebody to offload, somebody to listen to them, so they feel heard and validated. Because a lot of people have grown up being unseen, unheard children, so have never had that validation of their feelings. So if we can give people that listening ear, I mean, it's so simple to do, but it has such a huge positive effect on that other person's healing and wellness journey. If we can just do that simple thing for somebody, that in itself is massive to that other person on their healing journey.
Well, you make such a great point, because the other thing is, when you get lost in something bigger or someone bigger than yourself, you think less of yourself during that time.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in the middle of some joyful occasion, you forget you're sick.
Yeah.
Right? And be an interesting question to a doctor after they give you whatever bad opinion they might have. And I'm all for doctors. When you need them, you're happy they're there. So nothing against medicine. But I wonder if anybody ever asked, what's the good part of what you just told me?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what is it that I should be grateful for having this, that's going to, somebody could say, well, you have more time to yourself. You'll have a bigger team to help you heal, whatever it is. But if someone can't tell you anything good about what you just received, and they're the ones who are going to be responsible to help you, well, what good could the help be if there is no good from them to say, well, people who do this, this, and this have a better chance, or here's a way you can get 3 more years if you want to, or something. Because I think it's the empathy that goes into healing. When you got a practitioner, whether a doctor, a acupuncturist, a massage therapist, whatever gives you a better health and better mindset, it's because you feel their hands have something special, right? I remember my grandmother cooking us dinner all the time, and whatever she touched, I thought was healthy, right? So it was even like liver or something that most people would turn their nose up. I'd say, no, it's got to be healthy, because she's working with it and she's putting her love into it for her family. And that's an ingredient that you can't see or go to the store for. But I feel it, and I see how she prepares things and how she serves them, and how happy she is for everybody to be there together as a family. And I think families heal. And I think this is a family of choice. It's not by blood, it's really by choosing, at this hour, I'm going to be with these people, I'm going to learn. I'm going to be better when things happen to me, because I'll have a better way of seeing through those things. And if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. And it's up to you to believe. But another thing is, again, if you have somebody or something to live for, you'll live for it, right? And it's like, I can't leave right now, this person needs me, or I'm going to be there for that event, I don't care what these people say. It's kind of funny, back to my grandmother, she lived to be 97. And I asked her, and her mind was still 100% towards the end. And I said to her, I said, how did you live so long? Because she was the sickest. You know, she got diabetes in the 50s when there was like a death sentence, and she lived, ate everything she wanted. And she said, you know, I buried 3 doctors already, you know? And I said, so what was the answer? And she said, I had a sense of humor. And whatever they told me, I listened to, but it never like changed my life. I was still going to do what I was going to do. So anyways, I know we're coming up on top of the hour. I want to thank everybody. It's been a wonderful conversation. It seems like me and Sarah are like-minded, just thinking of the feet and the parts of the body for the meditation that you created. And I thought of my feet yesterday and it came together. So there's a lot of stuff working around in the environment, and accept it as being in your favor, right? If the winds of change is in your favor, then you're on a fun time. So anyways, I'll just finish with, here we go with agree. Numbing is much better than dumbing or dumping friends and family. So true. Agree. Helpful is so much better than hateful for healing or dealing with friends and family. Cheers, 97 before heaven. That's great. I hope everybody makes it to 97. Thank you, Don and Sarah. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Sarah. Thank everybody. Tomorrow we've got Gretchen and Jason Gerardo with us. So please come and come back in 23 hours and we'll talk again. Thank you for all the healing, Sarah. Take care.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.